Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. Coming up tonight, we will find out why cancer of the esophagus is an increasing concern. But first tonight, helping seniors to avoid scams. Joining us for this week's Primetime Living segment, which is produced in partnership with the Maryland Department of Aging, is Angie Barnett, President and CEO of the Better Business Bureau of Greater Maryland. Angie, thanks for being here.
Good evening, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me back again. I appreciate it.
Glad you're here.
Yes.
Reading up on scams and senior citizens, it's no small thing. It's a lot of frequency, great frequency, and big numbers.
Big
numbers. A lot of money being taken
Yes,
from people who obviously can't afford it.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We do want to make sure we don't just think of senior scams as being just for those at low income, because when you talk about investment fraud, which is very prevalent for the senior citizens, those are people who do have money. But regardless, many seniors will find themselves losing an average of $1,000. And a lot of reports, the ones we're most heartbroken over, is when they lose their home, they lose their life savings. And that's where they've really gotten sucked into these scams. And it's really a psychological experience for them. And regretfully, we really don't know how pervasive this problem is, because so many are afraid or embarrassed to report it. You know, once they realize they've been taken, they may be reluctant to actually share with the family member or to actually report it.
It's beyond despicable that somebody
Yes.
would try to prey on anybody, much less this age group. Are they especially vulnerable, certain seniors?
Yeah, and I would say seniors are more vulnerable in general because they're home. They answer the door, they answer the phone. They may be more vulnerable because they are more trusting. That is a generation still. That is one of trust.
Even answering the phone is a generational thing at this
Well,
point.
that's a good point. That is a good point. But they're more likely to do that.
To be polite.
They are, and to listen to stories. Sometimes they are, you may find a lot of our senior population, they are yearning for friendship, for relationships, for contact. And so they are very receptive to the scam artist who comes off very friendly, outgoing, and connecting, building that relationship. It feels good. That's why the story of the home improvement guy, the person next door, may be more likely to take advantage of a senior citizen because of some of those general stereotypes we can say, which of course is not true of all, but what makes that generation more susceptible.
Better Business Bureau has a list of the top 3 scams for consumers over the age of 65. Number 1, a friend or family member emergency. I think this is also known as the grandparent
scam. Right, exactly. And we hear that. We hear it right here in this geographic area. Your viewers probably know somebody, and that is when the phone rings and the person says, "Grandma," and she'll say, "Is that you, Timmy? Is that you, Mary?" So
the bad guys know the name at that point.
They are quickly able to get that out of grandmom or granddad, because they will simply say, "This is your grandson." "Oh, is this you, Tommy?" And the grandson will go on to say, "I'm in jail and I don't tell mom and dad, but I need some money. I'm traveling abroad. I've had an accident. Don't tell mom and dad. I don't want them to worry. Send me some money." So they're really trying to get grandmom, granddad to send cash to wire money to them, and not to tell anybody. And there's one of the things to consider with senior scams is they create a sense of urgency, a need to immediately react, and they frequently have some kind of authoritarian figure, like "This is your grandson," or "This is the IRS."
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question about scams targeting the seniors, maybe you have a story to share, give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You can also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPT News. So what's the mechanism? If they convince somebody that the grandson, grandchild is in trouble, needs $1,000, most people don't have experience wiring money. How do they get it? Credit card?
Well, no, it is wiring money, but it's made simple. We all are familiar with, well, that generation, my generation, we're familiar with Western Union. So that's still a vehicle by which you can transfer the funds. Another one is a scam artist will say, now we want you to go to your local drugstore, your local store down the street, and get a Green Dot card or get an iTunes card of all things, but they will make suggestions and people go down and do that, and then they will send the identification code or actually transmit it through mail.
They may need to get cash to take it to the Western Union, so you wonder when they walk into the bank. It depends if somebody has a a relationship.
Yeah, well, or ATMs. It depends on how they get the money. But so many of them just simply report exactly what you said, a check being written. And those are frequently the ones we can intervene with and try to do something about is when, and that's why we always see if you have a senior citizen in your life, first you're blessed, and number two, be sure you're asking about their finances and the way they're spending their money. And the best way you can, not to close down the communication, but to let them know that there are things that can cause harm. I was in my mom's house and she had so many articles torn out of AARP about scams to watch for. So helping educate, it's our responsibility to tell these stories of what can happen to you.
Then one of the things to worry about, especially with seniors, is that that trusted person is sometimes the perpetrator. It becomes a confidant, a family member who takes advantage of somebody with maybe a little bit of diminished capacity. Hard to know who to trust.
Exactly, and that we see more often in transactions that involve maybe your investments and you're redirecting those. It can be something as drastic as power of attorney, getting their hands on the checking accounts. But in many cases, identity theft, which I think is always the most fascinating thing, the majority of identity theft, when you take out the credit card fraud from a scam artist, is from somebody you know. And that's simply walking in and seeing the bank account. So I walk into my elderly relative's home or the neighbor next door, I see bank accounts or any kind of credit card accounts, and that information is on letters that are just, they're easy to see and to scope out. And people pick those up and open up accounts using that information or charge on those accounts. So that's smaller than the larger investment fraud, but it sure happens. And that's one of our concerns. And like you said, it's one of the most despicable when it's somebody you know.
Yeah.
And trust.
And we don't want to scare everybody too much. Just a little bit.
Just
I mean,
you
just need to be on guard.
Well, you have to think about, in the state of Maryland, for example, we are 4th in the United States for identity theft. It's very pervasive here. Easy access to computers, a more educated population as a whole, but there are, we rank pretty high for identity theft, and credit card identity theft is the most pervasive. So that's where we want to see senior citizens, is to pay attention to their credit card accounts or any accounts that they have. But they also need to remember that when they are solicited, and that can be the phone calls where you're offered an incredible cruise or a travel plan, when somebody calls you to do home improvement, to offer home warranties, those are things that it's so helpful to have somebody you trust to have a conversation with. That is not a weakness, that's a strength. When you want to make sure you're protecting your dollars by having a conversation and getting the opinions of others. Or a lot of people call BBB and simply say, I got this check in the mail. It says I won the lottery. Is it real?
All right, let's familiarize people with how that one works, because it's a common scam.
It is, and we used to talk about the Nigerian prince. We're still talking about those scams, and this is the one, particularly to people who want money, who need money, who hope for money, when they get that check in the mail and it's a cover letter that says they've won usually a foreign lottery, a foreign sweepstakes. It's not local. It's really out of the country. Right. And they say, this check looks so real, it has to be real. And trying to convince them that it's not. And thankfully, we have educated tellers, we have educated bank personnel. But
when somebody comes in to deposit one of those,
exactly,
because isn't there like the trick is that it'll look like it's gone through?
Well, these are just checks that are written out and you can cash them. And what's sophisticated now is they have watermarks, they have indications that they are authentic, and we believe it's real. So we take it to the teller and say, I want to deposit this.
But how the crook makes money because you front them some money, right?
True. And that's the second part of it. I'm going to cash it, and then I'm going to send money. I've won the sweepstakes, so I'm going to send tax money. I've won the lottery. I'm going to do a transactional fee. So I'm going to send something to the scam artist, and I'm going to keep the rest for myself. When it bounces, I'm then held accountable for any expenses that I paid out of it as well.
That's it. Let's talk to Sylvia in Washington. Thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yes. My question is that I get a lot of student loan calls saying that I have to pay a student loan that I never had outside of the Internal Revenue calls. And do I just hang up or?
Yeah. How often are they calling you?
Every day, about 3, 4, 5 times a day.
Wow, that's just horrible.
Not only on my house phone, they call me on my cell phone as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks so much. How do you get them off the phone?
Yeah, I don't. I hang up, and regretful. And yes, Sylvia should hang up each and every time. One of the things that I have a tendency to do is not to answer a number that I don't recognize.
They can leave a message.
They can leave a message, and because once you answer and they know it's an active phone, that there is a human behind it, they're very persistent. And as Sylvia said, they're going to call about the IRS or a student loan. They're going to call frequently and enough. They may wear you down, or they may catch you at a time when you said, well, I know I don't have a student loan, but maybe I owe this kind of debt, and they catch you. So don't answer the phone at all, or if you do, hang up.
And the IRS doesn't call people.
The IRS doesn't call people. They actually will write you a letter. And the IRS is the first to say, and I kind of agree, if you're behind in your taxes or in arrears and there's issue, most people know. You are somewhat aware of it. So if this is a total surprise, if somebody calls you and tells you you owe on a credit card and it's a total surprise, you need to hang up and call IRS yourself and ask, or call the credit card company and ask, and don't use the number they gave you.
And you can call the Better Business Bureau if you need some advice. Who else is there? There's the Attorney General's office has a consumer protection division. Some counties do.
Yes.
Maybe a senior center.
And
where
very
would you...
proud of the AG's office, because they're doing so much work in that area to protect consumers with the legislation and also to take it. We're one of a good resource for filing a complaint, and also we have a tool called Scam Tracker, BBB does. And Scam Tracker shows you real-time people reporting scam and fraud, and you can sort of see it sweep across the state or across the United States in doing that. Those are great things. The FTC is a wonderful place to report, and we're
Federal Trade Commission.
The Federal Trade Commission, they're very interested. They're the ones that actually have the enforcement capacity to shut down a lot of scam call centers that are usually overseas. So FTC is a great place to report.
Before we go, to fight identity theft, you have a shredding event.
We
It's
do.
like a big party where everybody brings their old stuff.
It is. We'll also have Ravens mascot, Poe. We'll have the O's mascot there. So
Well, they better not get their
so it's
they're
going to
like
be a party.
feathers caught in the shredder.
That
could
is
be
true.
that could
They
be
won't
very
be helping.
dangerous.
They'll just be dancing a jig. But April 28th begins at 8 a.m. We'll be there until noon, or if all the trucks fill up, we have 2 locations, one at White Marsh and one at the fairgrounds, White Marsh IKEA and at the fairgrounds up in Timonium. Again, it begins at 8 o'clock. You can bring 3 boxes or 3 bags of information that has account numbers, your taxes. If your taxes are older than 6 years, you might want to consider destroying those old bank statements for people who still have bank accounts and do that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's
old
not just
checks,
online.
all kinds of stuff. Bring it up and we shred for free, and we shred right there on site. So protecting yourself from fraud, eliminating ways for identity theft, one of the best ways possible.
Angie Barnett, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it, and thanks to your viewers as well.
Thank you very much. Just ahead tonight, how doctors are helping more people to fight esophageal cancer. We'll be right back.
Got an unused vehicle going nowhere? Donate it to the one place that can take you any place. Visit mpt.org/vehicles and support the programs you love on MPT.
The MPT app puts our programs right at your fingertips, so you can choose when to watch, what to watch, wherever you want to watch it. Download it now.
What happens in Japan and Asia matters to me. And with NHK World's newsroom in Tokyo, I get the news live from Japan right at the start of my day.
New ideas come out of Asia all the time. NHK Newsline reports on business, technology, and world events from Tokyo to Bangkok.
Once in the morning gives me a heads up on the competition.
Every hour on the hour, the news I want from Asia.
Watch NHK World now on Comcast Channel 268 and Verizon Channel 480.
Are you turning 70 and a half this year? If so, you generally have to start spending down your retirement account. Even the minimum distribution can place you in a sticky situation. Luckily, you can now use your IRA to make tax-free gifts. Gifts up to $100,000 will never count as income, but always make a difference. That's icing on the cake.
Make your gift for this year before December 31st. Visit mpt.org/support.
Joining us in the studio now for this week's Your Health segment is Dr. Seamus Card of the Division of Thoracic Surgery at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and Director of Robotic Surgery at the University of Maryland Medical Center. Doctor, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having us.
We want to focus on cancer of the esophagus, which is the tube that goes from your mouth southward. Why is this increasing? It is increasing, right?
Yes, it's increasing worldwide and in the United States. It appears to be most recently due to acid reflux, which we believe is mostly due to Western diet and a lot of other things. The other type of esophageal cancer, there's 2 types, adenocarcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma. The squamous cell is more commonly associated with cigarette smoking and alcohol consumption, whereas the adenocarcinoma is almost exclusively due to acid reflux.
Is this a particularly difficult cancer to treat?
It can be. It's normally not found until a little too late and more of an advanced, a locally advanced disease. So it's going to require what we call multimodality therapy. So they're going to need chemotherapy, radiation, potentially surgery, and then even more chemotherapy afterwards. So it becomes hard on the person.
What's the symptom? What makes somebody come to the doctor and it winds up being this?
So the most common symptom that patients present with is dysphagia, so the inability to swallow or difficulty swallowing. They notice that the common story that we always hear in clinic is, 2 months ago I started, every once in a while bread was sticking, and then it becomes progressive, and then meats, and then sometimes even up to liquids. Are the most common complaints of when you actually have the esophageal cancer. But
now somebody who has heartburn, what are they feeling, and how does that relate to this condition?
That's a good question. So heartburn is the acid reflux coming up from your stomach and causing symptoms in your distal esophagus. We believe, and we know that the pathway starts out with the changes from the acid in the tissue of the lining of the esophagus, and then that causes a change from the what we call squamous cells, which is what lines your esophagus, to more of a columnar lining, which is what lines your stomach. And as it changes, you start to go through dysplastic changes where it changes from normal cells to abnormal cells, and the abnormal cells eventually go on to cancer.
So the person who has the reflux symptoms, when that ultimately, we can talk about how often it leads to something more serious. Does it get worse? How do they, is there a way for them to tell that there's a problem developing?
Yeah, so people who have longstanding acid reflux should be seeing a gastroenterologist, talking to their primary care provider, and most gastroenterologists will recommend routine screening with upper endoscopy, especially if you've had longstanding issues with heartburn for years, or you've been on medications such as proton pump inhibitors for years.
Is there a set screening recommendation? Is it like mammograms, colonoscopies, where there's a formula to figure out who should get it?
Not yet, not yet. They've been working on that. Japan is kind of very much in the forefront of that, where people can walk into their local mall, get a quick endoscopy, and then continue their shopping. We're not there yet in the U.S.
Do you have to get knocked out for that? I mean,
No, we now have endoscopes that they just a little bit of spray in the back of the throat, and they actually go through your nose, and people in Japan are wide awake. Then they take the sheath out and next patient.
Is there a genetic basis, and are there any differences in terms of who gets it demographically, male, female, and so forth?
Yeah, so genetic basis, there seems to be some genetic components on some genes. There also seems to be patients who have genes that make them more susceptible to the development of Barrett's esophagus, which is a precursor to, or can be a precursor to, esophageal cancer. As opposed to, talking about the demographics, men are much more commonly get it than women. There was an interesting study actually that came out of Hopkins a couple of years ago that puts out that they believe that estrogen in women may be one of the reasons why women are less likely to get it. In Maryland, on average, there's about 270 cases of esophageal cancer annually, of which about 190 of them are in men.
Is there anything we should be doing differently to, I mean, I guess it goes to some of the recommendations for why, so many of us are overweight. If you could, fix everybody's diet or find a way to lower our risk, what would it be?
Definitely eat less. People who, you want to have a lower BMI, body mass index, you want to be a healthier weight. You want to eat smaller meals, something we don't do very well of in the United States. And then on top of it, you want to do your best to do dietary modifications to decrease your risks of heartburn. So tomato sauces, wine, chocolate, mince, a lot of the good stuff.
Wow. The surgery that becomes necessary sometimes for this, you do a robotically assisted version of that.
Correct.
Tell us about it.
So when patients end up going to surgery for esophageal cancer, we take their stomach and recreate a tube and then bring that up into their chest and take out that section of the esophagus that has the cancer in it. So we're able to do that in a minimally invasive fashion now, whereas previously you'd have a large incision on your abdomen and another one on your chest. We're now able to do it through 5 Band-Aid incisions on your abdomen and about 5 Band-Aid incisions on your chest. And through 5 millimeter, 8 millimeter holes, we're able to take out one's esophagus and do the exact same operation with the exact same outcomes.
Thinking back to what they're doing at the malls in Tokyo, is there, with endoscopy procedures that are done on the other end to look for and prevent colon cancer, there's a mechanism where they get rid of polyps and thereby prevent the development of something worse. Is there something similar with the esophagus? When you do an endoscopy and you see an area of concern, is there a way to prevent it from maybe developing further?
Yes, there's a couple things. So when patients are seen to have Barrett's esophagus, their biopsies are done and they're proven. There's a radiofrequency ablation, which is commercially known as something called BAR-X, and they're able to do a heat ablation of the tissue of the distal esophagus, allowing the normal lining of the esophagus to reform in that area. Additionally, we can do endomucosal resections, which is when you go in with the endoscope and you're able to take off a deeper biopsy. And sometimes you can get very early cancers in that way, and they're able to be treated that way successfully.
Let's grab a phone call. Allegheny County, this is Mark. Mark, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. I wanted to ask the incidence of sleep apnea with the conversation you're having.
Good question. Thank you very much. Relationship?
Yeah, so again, that gets to weight. So patients, obstructive sleep apnea is seen more commonly in patients who are heavy set. That's increasing abdominal weight and pressure. That increases acid reflux, and it's all part and parcel.
What's happening in research? What are you most excited about?
So I think there's the thing with esophageal cancer, which is really exciting, is the way that we're starting to manage the patients as they're coming into surgery. We're able to start looking at protons, which is used at the Maryland Proton Center, to help decrease the risks for complications from the radiation that it has to be given at the beginning of prior to surgery as part of their treatment.
Very good. Dr. Seamus Carr with the University of Maryland Medical Center. Doctor, thank you very much for the time.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Coming up Thursday on Your Money and Business is free tuition on the way for community colleges in Maryland. We'll find out how that works. Then remember to join us on Friday for State Circle and the latest on Maryland politics. Remember to check our website, mpt.org, information on upcoming programs. And please follow us on Twitter @MPT News. Now, for all of us here at MPT, I'm Jeff Salkin. Thanks for watching Direct Connection, and have a good night.
Your Health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.